The abandoned junkyard on the outskirts of Bakersfield held secrets that would reshape modern warfare. Among rusted car frames and shattered windshields, a 12-year-old girl named Nika Thompson was about to discover a skill that would make her the most lethal precision shooter the world had ever seen. But her training ground wasn't a military academy or shooting range. It was broken glass, discarded bottles, and the desperate need to survive. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Nika Thompson's childhood ended abruptly on a Tuesday morning in March 2003. Her father, Marcus Thompson, a decorated Army Ranger turned security contractor, received deployment orders for Iraq that would keep him overseas for 18 months. Her mother, Sarah, had disappeared 3 years earlier, leaving behind only medical bills and an addiction that consumed their savings. With no relatives willing or able to care for a precocious 12-year-old, Marcus made a decision that would haunt him for years. He left Nika with his old Army buddy, Jake Morrison, in a rundown trailer park outside Bakersfield, California. Jake Morrison was a man drowning in his own demons. The Desert Storm veteran spent his disability checks on whiskey and prescription pills, trying to silence the memories that echoed through his mind like gunshots in an empty canyon. His trailer was a monument to decay, peeling linoleum floors, water-stained walls, and windows held together with duct tape. The surrounding area was no better, a collection of forgotten dreams and broken promises where meth labs operated behind drawn curtains and police sirens were as common as morning coffee. For the first month, Nika tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. She attended Roosevelt Middle School, where her sharp intellect and military bearing made her an outsider among classmates who viewed education as a temporary inconvenience. Teachers noticed her exceptional spatial reasoning and mathematical abilities, but her guardianship situation meant she fell through the administrative cracks. When Jake started disappearing for days at a time, leaving her with nothing but stale cereal and canned soup, survival became her primary education. The transformation began with necessity. The trailer park attracted predators like flies to rotting fruit, dealers, addicts, and men who saw a young girl alone as an opportunity. Nika learned to identify the sound of different footsteps on gravel, to distinguish between the slam of a car door that meant trouble and one that meant salvation. She discovered that broken glass scattered around the trailer's perimeter created an early warning system, crunching underfoot whenever someone approached after dark. It was during one of these sleepless nights, clutching a kitchen knife while listening to unknown footsteps circle the trailer, that Nika first noticed how light refracted through the broken windshield propped against Jake's shed. The way moonbeams bent and focused through the fractured glass created precise points of light that moved with mathematical predictability. Her mind, already wired for patterns and angles, began calculating trajectories and focal points. The next morning, while Jake slept off another bender, Nika ventured into the junkyard that sprawled behind the trailer park like a mechanical graveyard. Decades of abandoned vehicles had created a labyrinth of twisted metal and scattered debris. Among the wreckage, she discovered something extraordinary: thousands of pieces of broken glass of varying thickness, curvature, and optical density. Windshields, side windows, mirrors, and bottles created a natural laboratory for understanding light, reflection, and precision. She started small, using pieces of broken mirror to reflect sunlight onto specific targets: a rusty can balanced on a fence post, a discarded cigarette pack wedged between car bumpers. Hours passed as she experimented with angles, learning how different glass fragments focused light differently, how atmospheric conditions affected the beam's path, and how to compensate for wind and heat shimmer. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later, during a particularly violent thunderstorm. Lightning illuminated the junkyard in stroboscopic flashes, and Nika noticed how the brief, intense light created perfect conditions for identifying distant targets through her improvised glass optics. She could see details invisible to the naked eye: the individual feathers on a crow perched 200 yards away, the serial numbers on rusted license plates, the precise movement of rats scurrying between debris piles. But optical precision was only half the equation. Nika needed a way to translate her enhanced vision into accurate projectile delivery. Traditional firearms were impossible to acquire, but the junkyard provided alternatives. She fashioned slingshots from inner tubes and metal brackets, learning to calculate rubber tension and release angles with mathematical precision. Ball bearings salvaged from automotive parts became her ammunition, each one carefully selected for weight consistency and aerodynamic properties. The first successful long-distance shot occurred on a scorching afternoon in July. Using a complex arrangement of 3 different glass fragments to create a makeshift telescopic sight, Nika targeted a beer bottle positioned 150 yards away behind a wall of stacked tires. The shot required calculating not just distance and trajectory, but also accounting for the light refraction through multiple glass elements and the crosswind sweeping across the junkyard. The ball bearing flew in a perfect arc, shattering the bottle with surgical precision. Word of the strange girl in the junkyard began spreading through the local community like wildfire through dry brush. Migrant workers witnessed impossible shots, rats eliminated from 100 yards away, cans knocked off posts with mathematical precision, even birds taken cleanly from flight. But these weren't parlor tricks or carnival displays. Nika was developing a fundamental understanding of ballistics, optics, and precision that surpassed anything taught in military academies. The psychological transformation paralleled her technical development. The quiet, bookish girl who once dreamed of college scholarships was hardening into something far more dangerous. Each successful shot built confidence. Each calculated risk taken in the dangerous trailer park environment developed tactical thinking. Each night spent alone with predators circling taught her the value of overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. By autumn, Nika had created an entire training regimen around her glass-assisted shooting system. She constructed moving targets using shopping cart wheels and pulleys, simulating the complex trajectory calculations required for engaging moving subjects. Different weather conditions became training opportunities. Fog taught her to shoot by sound and estimated position. Wind taught her compensation techniques. Rain taught her to account for atmospheric interference with her optical system. The junkyard itself became her academy. She memorized every sightline, every piece of cover, every escape route. The arrangement of debris created natural shooting positions with overlapping fields of fire, turning the entire area into a defensive network that she could navigate blindfolded. Her understanding of angles and reflection allowed her to engage targets around corners using mirrors and glass fragments, making her effectively invisible while maintaining lethal accuracy. Jake Morrison, when coherent enough to notice, attributed the strange improvements around the trailer to local kids playing pranks. The rats that had infested the area disappeared. Aggressive dogs learned to avoid the property, and the occasional prowlers who tested the perimeter seemed to encounter increasingly unfortunate accidents. Broken glass would mysteriously appear in their path, causing flat tires and painful cuts that discouraged return visits. But Nika knew her improvised sanctuary was temporary. Her father's deployment was scheduled to end in 8 months, and she understood that her current situation was unsustainable. The skills she was developing in the junkyard represented something far more valuable than childhood survival tactics. They were the foundation of a military capability that could reshape modern warfare. As winter approached and the California sun hung lower in the sky, creating new challenges for her glass-assisted optics, Nika began planning for the future. She had transformed herself from an abandoned child into something unprecedented, a precision shooter whose unconventional training had produced capabilities that traditional military programs couldn't replicate. The broken glass that had started as a survival tool was becoming the foundation of a legend. Every shard, every reflection, every impossible shot was preparing her for a destiny that would make her name synonymous with precision, fear, and the deadly art of the impossible shot. The first person to truly understand what Nika had become was Detective Ray Collins of the Kern County Sheriff's Department. A former Marine Corps scout sniper, Collins had spent 15 years investigating crimes that ranged from domestic disputes to cartel violence. He'd seen every type of violence imaginable, but the crime scene reports crossing his desk in late November 2003 defied conventional explanation. 3 separate incidents within a 2-week period had left experienced investigators baffled. A known drug dealer named Tommy Martinez had been found unconscious in his car with 4 flat tires, each punctured by what appeared to be precision impacts from small projectiles. The angle suggested the shots came from an impossible position, nearly 300 yards away across open terrain with no concealment. Security cameras showed no muzzle flashes, heard no gunshots, yet the ballistic evidence was undeniable. 2 days later, Vincent "Psycho" Rodriguez, a predator with a history of targeting vulnerable women in trailer parks, suffered a similar fate while stalking his next victim. This time, the projectiles had shattered both headlights and the windshield of his motorcycle while he was moving at 35 miles per hour. The mathematical precision required to lead a moving target at that distance, accounting for speed and trajectory, suggested military-grade training. The third incident involved Marcus "Tank" Williams, a 280-pound enforcer for a local meth operation who had been terrorizing residents for protection money. Williams was discovered the following morning zip-tied to a lamppost, his truck disabled by strategically placed projectiles that had severed brake lines and punctured the radiator. What disturbed Collins most wasn't the technical skill, it was the surgical precision that left Williams unharmed while completely neutralizing his capability for violence. Collins began his investigation by mapping the incident locations. All 3 occurred within a 5-mile radius of the Sunset Vista Trailer Park, and preliminary trajectory analysis suggested the shots originated from elevated positions that provided clear sightlines across the valley. The problem was that no such positions existed in the flat Bakersfield terrain, except for the massive junkyard that sprawled behind the trailer park like a metallic mountain range. His first visit to the junkyard revealed nothing unusual. Decades of accumulated vehicles had created natural towers and observation points, but Collins found no evidence of recent activity. No shell casings, no disturbed earth, no signs of a sniper's nest. However, his trained eye noticed something peculiar about the way sunlight reflected off certain pieces of glass scattered throughout the area. The angles were too precise, too purposeful to be random debris. It was during his third reconnaissance visit, conducted just after sunrise when atmospheric conditions created optimal light refraction, that Collins witnessed something that challenged everything he understood about precision shooting. A glint of focused light lasting no more than 2 seconds emanated from a position roughly 400 yards from him. Through his binoculars, he watched as a can that had been balanced on a fence post was knocked flying by an invisible projectile. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So, if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Collins immediately moved toward the source of the shot, using cover and concealment techniques he hadn't employed since Fallujah. What he found defied military doctrine and conventional sniper training. A 12-year-old girl was disassembling what appeared to be a complex optical system constructed entirely from salvaged glass and metal brackets. Her movements were methodical, professional, displaying the kind of field discipline that took years to develop. "Don't move any closer," Nika said without turning around, her voice carrying an authority that seemed impossible from someone her age. "I've got 3 more positions with overlapping fields of fire, and you're standing in a kill zone." Collins froze. The tactical assessment was correct. He was indeed exposed in an area with multiple elevated positions and limited cover. More importantly, the girl's situational awareness and command presence indicated training that surpassed most military personnel he'd encountered. "I'm Detective Collins, Kern County Sheriff. I'm investigating some incidents in the area." "I know who you are," Nika replied, finally turning to face him. "Former Marine, second tour in Iraq, Scout Sniper Platoon. You've been conducting surveillance on this area for 6 days." The level of counter-surveillance awareness chilled Collins. This wasn't a child playing with makeshift toys. This was an operator with capabilities that shouldn't exist outside of special operations units. "The people you've been discouraging, they were all dangerous individuals." They were predators, Nika corrected. Martinez was planning to expand his operation into the elementary school. Rodriguez had already selected his next 3 victims. Williams was collecting debts by breaking fingers. I eliminated threats before they could cause harm. Collins studied the girl more carefully. Her clothing was practical and well-maintained despite obvious poverty. Her posture suggested constant vigilance, and her eyes continuously scanned for threats while maintaining conversational eye contact. Most tellingly, her hands remained positioned near what appeared to be concealed weapons. Not toys, but carefully crafted tools designed for lethal application. How did you acquire these skills? Necessity. Nika gestured toward the improvised optical system. Traditional training assumes access to conventional equipment and facilities. I had to develop alternatives. Collins examined the glass apparatus more closely. The engineering was sophisticated beyond anything he'd encountered in military sniper schools. Multiple fragments of different optical density were precisely positioned to create variable magnification and light-gathering capability. The mounting system allowed for rapid assembly and concealment, making detection nearly impossible. This is original research, he realized. You're not copying existing techniques, you're inventing new ones. Glass has properties that manufactured optics can't replicate, Nika explained. Different curvatures and densities create unique focal characteristics. By combining multiple fragments, I can achieve magnification and clarity that exceeds military-grade scopes while remaining completely undetectable to counter sniper equipment. The implications were staggering. If this 12-year-old had independently developed advanced sniper capabilities using improvised equipment, her potential with proper resources and training could revolutionize military doctrine. Collins made a decision that would alter both their futures. Instead of reporting Nika to Child Protective Services or treating her as a juvenile offender, he chose to become her mentor. His own experience with military bureaucracy had taught him that exceptional capabilities were often wasted by conventional thinking. Over the following weeks, Collins began providing Nika with advanced tactical training that complemented her self-taught skills. He introduced her to military map reading, communications protocols, and mission planning. More importantly, he helped her understand the ethical framework that separated professional soldiers from simple killers. Precision isn't just about accuracy, Collins explained during one of their training sessions. It's about applying exactly the right amount of force to achieve the desired outcome. Too little and threats persist. Too much and you become a threat. Nika absorbed these lessons with the same intensity she'd brought to mastering her glass-assisted shooting system. Collins watched her evolve from a survivor using lethal skills for protection into a tactical thinker who understood the broader implications of her capabilities. The transformation accelerated when Collins introduced her to advanced ballistics calculations and environmental factors that affected long-range shooting. Nika's mathematical aptitude, combined with her empirical experience, allowed her to understand concepts that typically required years of formal training. She began developing firing solutions for scenarios that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. By January 2004, Nika had progressed beyond anything Collins could teach her using conventional methods. Her combination of improvised equipment and intuitive understanding of advanced ballistics had created capabilities that exceeded military sniper standards. More importantly, her tactical thinking and ethical framework had developed to match her technical skills. Collins began documenting Nika's capabilities and training methods, recognizing that her innovations could benefit military snipers worldwide. However, he also understood that her unofficial status and unconventional background would make official recognition impossible through normal channels. The solution came from an unexpected source. Collins's former commanding officer, now Lieutenant Colonel David Morrison, was developing an experimental training program for special operations personnel. Morrison had been searching for innovative approaches to precision shooting that could give American forces advantages in asymmetric warfare environments. When Collins shared video footage of Nika's capabilities, Morrison's response was immediate and decisive. Within 2 weeks, official paperwork was being processed to have Nika declared an emancipated minor and enrolled in an experimental military program that would formalize her training while preserving her innovative techniques. Marcus Thompson's deployment was extended by 6 months, but this time the separation served a different purpose. Nika was no longer an abandoned child surviving through desperate improvisation. She was becoming something unprecedented in military history. The broken glass and junkyard debris that had been her salvation were about to become the foundation of a new chapter in precision warfare. Fort Bragg's Special Operations Training Center had never received a recruit like Nika Thompson. At 14, she was the youngest person ever admitted to the Precision Warfare Development Program, a classified initiative designed to push the boundaries of long-range engagement capabilities. Lieutenant Colonel David Morrison had personally reviewed her unconventional application materials, video footage that defied conventional ballistics understanding, and technical innovations that military researchers had never considered. The program itself was experimental, operating under a different classification than traditional military training. Selected personnel were drawn from various backgrounds: reformed criminals with exceptional spatial intelligence, mathematical prodigies with military aspirations, and, in rare cases, individuals whose unique circumstances had produced capabilities that couldn't be replicated through standard methods. Nika's arrival at the facility created immediate friction with both instructors and fellow trainees. Her youth was the obvious concern, but her complete disregard for established doctrine proved more problematic. During her first marksmanship evaluation, she ignored the provided equipment entirely, instead requesting permission to construct her own sighting system from materials in the facility shop. Master Sergeant Patricia Hayes, the program's senior instructor, initially dismissed this request as the arrogance of an untrained civilian. Hayes had trained Marine Force recon snipers, Army Rangers, and Navy SEALs. She'd served 3 combat deployments and held multiple long-distance shooting records. The idea that a teenager with improvised equipment could challenge military-grade precision struck her as delusional. The demonstration changed everything. Using glass fragments salvaged from a broken vehicle windshield and metal brackets fashioned from scrap aluminum, Nika assembled an optical system that appeared primitive compared to the advanced scopes used by other trainees. However, when the shooting began, conventional wisdom collapsed. The qualification course required engaging targets at distances ranging from 300 to 800 meters under varying environmental conditions. While other trainees used high-powered rifles with precision optics, Nika employed a modified bolt-action .22 caliber rifle that instructors considered inadequate for the distances involved. Her first shot, aimed at a 400-meter target partially concealed behind foliage, struck center mass despite wind conditions that had caused 3 previous shooters to miss entirely. The trajectory calculations required to compensate for the lightweight ammunition at that distance should have been impossible without advanced ballistics computers. "Explain your firing solution," Hayes demanded, studying the target through binoculars. "Glass refraction allows me to see atmospheric density variations," Nika replied, adjusting her improvised scope for the next target. "The .22 round has different wind drift characteristics that can be advantageous if you account for the ballistic coefficient differential." Hayes had no response. The technical explanation was sound, but the practical application represented thinking that military doctrine didn't address. Traditional sniper training emphasized standardized equipment and proven methods. Nika was demonstrating that innovation could exceed conventional limitations. The 600-meter target required engaging a silhouette visible only through a narrow gap between 2 buildings. Other trainees had struggled to identify the target, let alone achieve accurate shot placement. Nika spent 30 seconds studying the angles, then fired a single round that struck the target's center ring. "How did you calculate the ricochets off those wall surfaces?" asked Captain Jennifer Walsh, the program's ballistic specialist. "I didn't use ricochets," Nika answered. "The glass fragments create a compound lens system that bends light around obstacles. I was shooting directly at the target, just using a curved trajectory path that conventional optics can't see." Walsh examined Nika's improvised scope more closely. The arrangement of different glass densities was creating optical effects that duplicate the function of fiber optic periscopes, allowing the shooter to engage targets that were technically beyond line of sight. The implications for urban warfare were revolutionary. The final challenge involved an 800-meter shot at a moving target under rapidly changing wind conditions. Previous shooters had required multiple attempts to achieve hits, and several had failed entirely. Nika's approach was different. Instead of fighting the environmental factors, she incorporated them into her firing solution. Her single shot struck the moving target during a moment when crosswinds created maximum difficulty for conventional shooting. The mathematical precision required to predict both target movement and environmental variables simultaneously exceeded anything the instructors had witnessed. This isn't marksmanship, Hayes realized. This is something entirely new. Over the following months, Nika's training evolved in ways that challenged every assumption about sniper development. While other trainees focused on mastering standard equipment and established techniques, Nika was essentially conducting advanced research into precision shooting theory. Her glass-based optical systems evolved rapidly once she gained access to military resources. Working with the facility's technical personnel, she developed modular systems that could be rapidly assembled in field conditions using locally sourced materials. Each configuration optimized different aspects of target engagement: magnification for extreme distances, light gathering for low visibility conditions, and angular compensation for urban environments. The psychological aspects of her development proved equally unprecedented. Traditional sniper training emphasized emotional control and stress management to maintain accuracy under combat conditions. Nika demonstrated that her unconventional background had produced natural stress resistance that couldn't be taught through conventional methods. During psychological evaluations, Dr. Amanda Foster, the program's behavioral specialist, discovered that Nika's survival experiences had created mental frameworks that actually improved under pressure. Where other trainees showed degraded performance during simulated combat stress, Nika's accuracy increased as conditions became more dangerous. Her brain processes threats differently, Foster explained to Morrison during a progress review. Most people experience tunnel vision and decreased fine motor control under stress. She experiences enhanced focus and improved spatial awareness. This psychological profile complemented her technical innovations in ways that created synergistic effects. The combination of superior equipment adaptation and natural stress resistance produced performance levels that exceeded anything in military records. By her 16th birthday, Nika had progressed beyond the program's original parameters. Her innovations were being incorporated into training protocols for special operations units, and her techniques were being classified at levels that prevented public disclosure. More importantly, real-world situations were beginning to require capabilities that only she possessed. The first operational deployment came sooner than anyone expected. Intelligence reports indicated that high-value targets in Afghanistan were operating from positions that conventional snipers couldn't effectively engage. The terrain features and security protocols created scenarios that required the kind of innovative thinking that Nika had demonstrated throughout her training. Morrison made the controversial decision to deploy her as part of a joint special operations team despite her age and unconventional background. The mission parameters required engaging targets at distances and under conditions that pushed the boundaries of what military planners considered feasible. Nika's equipment for the deployment represented the culmination of 2 years of development work. Her optical systems had evolved into modular configurations that could be rapidly adapted for specific mission requirements. The glass components were now precision manufactured rather than improvised, but the fundamental principles remained based on her original junkyard discoveries. The psychological preparation was equally thorough. Combat deployment represented the transition from training scenarios to real-world consequences, where lives depended on precision and judgment. For most snipers, this transition required careful mental conditioning to manage the stress of taking human lives. Nika's response to the briefings surprised everyone involved. Rather than anxiety about the moral implications of lethal force, she demonstrated the same analytical approach that had characterized her technical development. She understood that her capabilities represented tools for protecting friendly forces and accomplishing strategic objectives. Precision isn't about the shot, she explained during her final pre-deployment evaluation. It's about understanding exactly what needs to happen and making it happen with minimal collateral effects. The statement captured something fundamental about her evolution from abandoned child to precision warfare specialist. The broken glass and desperate survival tactics had transformed into something far more sophisticated. A comprehensive understanding of how to apply lethal force with surgical precision in service of strategic objectives. As her transport prepared for departure to Afghanistan, Nika carried with her not just revolutionary equipment and techniques, but a completely new approach to precision warfare that would soon reshape how military planners thought about impossible missions. The Hindu Kush Mountains of eastern Afghanistan presented challenges that no training facility could replicate. At 8,000 feet above sea level, atmospheric conditions affected ballistics in ways that required constant recalculation. The terrain was a maze of razor-sharp ridges and hidden valleys where Taliban forces had established seemingly impregnable positions. Nika's first operational assignment came as part of Operation Silent Thunder, a joint special operations mission targeting a high-value Taliban commander named Abdul Rashid Nazir. Intelligence indicated that Nazir was coordinating attacks against NATO supply convoys from a fortified compound built into a cliff face that provided natural protection against conventional assault. The compound's location was tactically brilliant, positioned 1,200 meters across a valley from the nearest feasible observation point, with multiple escape routes through cave systems that honeycombed the mountainside. Previous attempts to eliminate Nazir using guided munitions had failed due to civilian casualties and the target's ability to disappear into the underground network before strikes could be completed. Team Alpha consisted of 6 personnel: Captain Michael Santos as mission commander, 2 Force Reconnaissance Marines for security, a communications specialist, a forward observer, and Nika as the precision engagement specialist. Her official designation was Special Applications Sniper, a classification created specifically to accommodate her unique capabilities. The infiltration to their observation position required a 3-day trek through terrain that challenged even the experienced operators on the team. Nika carried not only her personal weapons and equipment, but also the components for 3 different optical systems, each optimized for specific engagement scenarios that intelligence analysis had identified as possibilities. Staff Sergeant Robert Chen, one of the reconnaissance Marines, initially questioned why the mission required such unconventional equipment. His skepticism increased when he observed Nika assembling what appeared to be improvised devices rather than the military-grade optics he expected for such a critical operation. "That looks like something built in a garage workshop," Chen observed, watching Nika calibrate her primary glass-based scope. "It was," Nika replied without looking up from her adjustments. "The principles are sound regardless of where they were developed." The first day of surveillance revealed why the Nazir had avoided elimination for so long. The compound's defensive positions were designed by someone with intimate knowledge of counter-sniper tactics. Traditional shooting positions were blocked by carefully placed obstacles, and the target's movements followed patterns that minimized exposure to conventional engagement angles. More problematically, Nazir employed human shields by conducting meetings in rooms where civilians were always present. Women and children moved freely throughout the compound, making precision strikes impossible without unacceptable collateral damage. "Standard engagement protocols won't work here," Santos concluded after reviewing the surveillance data. "We need something that can eliminate the target without harming non-combatants." Nika spent that evening studying the compound through her various optical systems, identifying details that conventional reconnaissance had missed. The glass components in her scopes revealed structural information invisible to traditional optics: stress fractures in walls that indicated interior layouts, heat signatures that showed occupancy patterns, and most importantly, architectural features that could be exploited for precision engagement. "There's a ventilation shaft that connects to the room where Nazir holds his security meetings," she reported during the team's planning session. "It's positioned at an angle that would allow indirect engagement without risking civilian casualties." The concept was unprecedented in military doctrine. Rather than direct line-of-sight engagement, Nika was proposing to use the building's architecture to deliver precision fire around corners and through obstacles that would normally prevent targeting. Chen studied the compound diagrams with growing skepticism. "You're talking about shooting through a shaft that's maybe 8 inches in diameter, then redirecting the round to hit a specific target inside a room you can't see." "The mathematics are complex, but achievable," Nika explained. "The glass optics allow me to see the shaft's interior geometry. Combined with acoustic intelligence about room occupancy, I can calculate firing solutions that account for the trajectory modifications required." Santos made the decision to authorize the attempt. Conventional options had been exhausted, and the intelligence value of eliminating Nazir justified accepting the risks associated with experimental techniques. The shot required 2 days of preparation. Nika constructed a specialized optical system that combined elements from all 3 of her modular configurations. The resulting device resembled a complex telescope more than a rifle scope, but it provided capabilities that military equipment couldn't match. The ballistics calculations were equally complex. The .308 round would need to enter the ventilation shaft at precisely the correct angle to ricochet off interior surfaces and maintain sufficient velocity to achieve lethal effect. Environmental factors, including wind speed at multiple altitudes, temperature differentials affecting air density, and even the compound's internal air currents, all required mathematical integration. On the morning of the 3rd day, surveillance confirmed that Nazir was conducting his weekly security briefing in the targeted room. Intelligence intercepts indicated that only male combatants were present, eliminating the civilian casualty concerns that had prevented previous engagement attempts. Nika's firing position was a natural rock outcropping that provided concealment while offering the precise angle required for the indirect engagement. The distance to the compound was 1,247 meters, well within her demonstrated capabilities, but the complexity of the trajectory path made this unlike any shot attempted in military history. The team watched through spotting scopes as Nika made final adjustments to her optical system. Her breathing was controlled, her movements deliberate. Despite the unprecedented nature of the engagement, her demeanor remained calm and analytical. "Wind speed is steady at 7 knots from the northwest," reported the forward observer. "The temperature differential between firing position and target is showing minimal variation." Nika nodded, making microscopic adjustments to her scope alignment. Through the complex glass arrangement, she could see details of the ventilation shaft's interior that were invisible to conventional optics. The trajectory path was clear in her mind, a precisely calculated ricochet that would redirect the round through 90 degrees of angle change. The shot itself was anticlimactic. A single suppressed round, barely audible even to the team members positioned nearby. Through their observation equipment, they watched as dust puffed from the ventilation shaft opening, indicating successful entry of the projectile. 17 seconds later, communications intercepts confirmed the elimination of the target. Nazir had been killed instantly by a round that had appeared to materialize from nowhere, striking him while he stood in a room that conventional wisdom considered impossible to engage. The psychological effect on the remaining Taliban forces was immediate and profound. Within hours, the compound was abandoned as word spread that the Americans possessed weapons that could kill through solid walls and around corners. The myth of impregnable defensive positions evaporated in the face of capabilities that seemed to violate the laws of physics. For Nika, the successful engagement represented validation of techniques that had originated in a California junkyard and evolved through military training into operational reality. The broken glass that had once been her survival tool had become an instrument of strategic warfare. But the mission's success also marked a transition in her role within the military structure. Word of the impossible shot spread through special operations communities, creating demand for capabilities that only she possessed. The experimental program at Fort Bragg became a launching pad for assignments that would test the absolute limits of precision warfare. The Hindu Kush engagement established precedents that would reshape how military planners approached seemingly impossible targeting scenarios. More immediately, it marked Nika's emergence as a strategic asset whose unique capabilities opened tactical possibilities that had never existed before. The success in Afghanistan transformed Nika from an experimental asset into something far more dangerous, a strategic weapon that intelligence agencies around the world wanted to either recruit or eliminate. Within 6 months of the Hindu Kush operation, classified reports began circulating through Allied intelligence networks describing an American operative with capabilities that defied conventional understanding of precision warfare. The Pentagon's response was swift and decisive. Nika was transferred to a black site facility in Virginia known only as the Workshop, where the most sensitive special operations personnel received advanced training for missions that officially didn't exist. Her new handler was Colonel Sarah Martinez, a veteran intelligence officer whose own background was so classified that even her official military records had been sanitized. "Your previous operations have created what we call a capability gap," Martinez explained during their first briefing. "Enemy forces are adapting to conventional sniper tactics, but they have no countermeasures for what you can do. That makes you incredibly valuable and equally vulnerable." The Workshop represented the cutting edge of military technology development. Unlike the experimental program at Fort Bragg, this facility possessed resources that most governments couldn't access. Advanced materials laboratories, quantum computing systems for ballistic calculations, and fabrication equipment that could produce precision components to tolerances measured in nanometers. Nika's equipment underwent revolutionary upgrades that preserved her innovative principles while incorporating technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. Her glass-based optical systems were enhanced with metamaterials that could bend light in ways that natural substances could achieve. The result was equipment that appeared conventional but possessed capabilities that verged on science fiction. The psychological profiling at the Workshop revealed aspects of Nika's development that previous evaluators had missed. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a specialist in combat stress psychology, discovered that Nika's unconventional background had produced mental frameworks that were fundamentally different from traditional military personnel. "Most snipers view their targets through the lens of military objectives," Warren explained to Martinez. "Nika sees them as components in complex systems that can be precisely modified to achieve desired outcomes. It's a completely different cognitive approach that allows for solutions that others can't conceive." This psychological profile became crucial when Nika received her first Workshop assignment, eliminating a terrorist financer named Hassan al-Mahmoud who was operating from a heavily fortified compound in Somalia. Al-Mahmoud had survived multiple assassination attempts by maintaining security protocols that made conventional approaches impossible. The target's defensive measures included rotating his location between 6 different safe houses, using body doubles for all public appearances, and employing counter-surveillance techniques that had defeated CIA operations for 3 years. Intelligence indicated that he was planning a major terrorist attack against European targets, but his security made direct action infeasible. Nika's mission briefing revealed why conventional operations had failed. Al-Mahmoud's security chief was Ahmed Khalil, a former Syrian intelligence officer who understood American special operations tactics better than most American operators. Khalil had designed defensive protocols specifically to counter sniper attacks, electronic surveillance, and infiltration attempts. "The target moves between locations using underground tunnels," Martinez explained, showing satellite imagery of the compound network. "His appearances above ground are limited to 30-second windows, always with multiple body doubles and never from the same position twice." Traditional sniper doctrine would consider such a target impossible to engage with acceptable probability of success. The combination of limited exposure time, multiple decoys, and unpredictable movement patterns created a scenario where conventional precision shooting was ineffective. Nika studied the intelligence data with the same analytical approach she'd brought to her junkyard training. Rather than focusing on the target's movements, she examined the infrastructure that supported his security system. The underground tunnel network, while providing protection, also created vulnerabilities that could be exploited by someone with her unique capabilities. The tunnels require ventilation systems, she observed, tracing the architectural plans. Air circulation patterns will create acoustic signatures that can be tracked using the right equipment. Her solution was unprecedented in special operations history. Instead of attempting to engage Al-Mahmoud during his brief surface appearances, Nika proposed tracking him through the tunnel system using acoustic triangulation and engaging him through the underground infrastructure itself. The technical challenges were enormous. Tracking a target moving through underground passages required detecting sounds that were barely above ambient noise levels. Converting that acoustic intelligence into precise targeting data demanded mathematical calculations that pushed the limits of real-time processing capabilities. The workshop's technical team worked for 3 weeks developing equipment that could support Nika's operational concept. The result was a system that combined seismic sensors, acoustic processing software, and predictive algorithms that could track underground movement with unprecedented precision. Nika's insertion into Somalia required a cover identity as a geological survey specialist conducting soil stability research for a fictitious development project. The cover provided legitimate reasons for deploying seismic monitoring equipment while positioning her within engagement range of the tunnel network. The surveillance phase lasted 2 weeks. Nika mapped the underground movement patterns while ostensibly conducting geological surveys. Her acoustic tracking system revealed that Al-Mahmoud followed specific routes between safe houses using timing patterns that created predictable windows of vulnerability. More importantly, she discovered that the tunnel system had structural weak points where precise application of force could create controlled collapses. Rather than attempting to track and engage a moving target through solid earth, she could modify the environment to force the target into a predetermined position. The operation itself required coordination between multiple technical systems operating in real time. Nika positioned herself at a surveying station 800 meters from the target area, using her geological cover to justify the presence of monitoring equipment. Her weapon system was disguised as a core sampling apparatus, invisible to the sophisticated counter-surveillance measures protecting the compound. When acoustic sensors confirmed that Al-Mahmoud was moving through the primary tunnel route, Nika initiated the engagement sequence. Her first shot was aimed not at the target, but at a specific structural support that her geological analysis had identified as critical to tunnel stability. The precision required was extraordinary. The round needed to strike a steel support beam buried 4 meters underground, with sufficient force to cause structural failure while ensuring that the collapse occurred at precisely the moment when Al-Mahmoud would be positioned directly underneath. The timing calculations incorporated not just ballistic flight time, but also structural engineering data about how quickly the tunnel would collapse once the support was compromised. Nika had essentially weaponized geology, using the Earth itself as a delivery system for lethal force. The engagement lasted 17 seconds from initial shot to mission completion. Seismic monitors confirmed the controlled tunnel collapse, and communications intercepts verified that Al-Mahmoud had been eliminated without the possibility of survival. To external observers, it appeared that aging infrastructure had simply failed catastrophically. The psychological impact extended far beyond the immediate target elimination. Al-Mahmoud's network believed that their most secure location had been compromised by supernatural forces. The idea that underground tunnels could be penetrated by precision weapons created paranoia that disrupted terrorist operations across the region. For intelligence agencies tracking Nika's capabilities, the Somalia operation represented a quantum leap in precision warfare possibilities. The combination of her innovative techniques and advanced technology had created capabilities that existed nowhere else in the world. But the mission's success also escalated the security concerns surrounding her continued operations. Enemy intelligence services were beginning to piece together patterns that suggested the existence of an American asset with unprecedented capabilities. The decision was made to implement Ghost Protocol, a classification level that would make Nika's very existence a state secret. Under Ghost Protocol, all records of her previous operations were buried under classification levels that prevented even Allied intelligence services from accessing them. Her identity was officially erased, replaced by cover legends that would allow her to operate in environments where her real background would create unacceptable risks. The teenager who had learned to shoot with broken glass had become something that defied conventional military categories, a strategic asset whose capabilities were so advanced that her existence had to be hidden from the world. 3 years after Ghost Protocol implementation, Nika operated under deep cover identities that changed with each mission. Her latest assignment would test every skill she developed since those early days in the Bakersfield junkyard, infiltrating Moscow to eliminate Viktor Kozlov, a Russian oligarch who had been selling advanced weapons technology to terrorist organizations while maintaining the facade of a legitimate businessman. Kozlov presented the most complex target profile Nika had ever encountered. A former Spetsnaz officer turned arms dealer, he understood operational security better than most intelligence professionals. His Moscow penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building, designed by paranoid Soviet architects who had assumed constant surveillance and infiltration attempts. The building's defensive features included reinforced concrete walls capable of stopping armor-piercing rounds, bulletproof glass rated against sniper attacks, and electronic countermeasures that could detect conventional surveillance equipment from considerable distances. More importantly, Kozlov employed security personnel trained in counter-sniper techniques by former KGB operatives who knew American special operations methods intimately. Nika's cover identity was Dr. Elena Vazquez, a Spanish art authentication specialist hired to evaluate Kozlov's private collection of stolen masterpieces. The cover required 6 months of preparation, including developing expertise in Renaissance painting techniques and establishing a documented history of previous authentication work that would survive scrutiny by Russian intelligence services. The mission briefing revealed why previous attempts to eliminate Kozlov had failed. CIA operations had been compromised by double agents within the oligarch's organization. MI6 surveillance had been detected and neutralized by counterintelligence sweeps. Even Israeli Mossad assassins had been forced to abort after discovering that their target locations were under constant observation by Russian security forces. Kozlov knows that Western intelligence agencies want him dead, Colonel Martinez explained during the final planning session. He's turned his penthouse into a fortress and his daily routine into a series of counter-surveillance exercises. Traditional approaches won't work. Nika studied the building schematics with particular attention to the architectural details that others had overlooked. While security analysts focused on defensive measures and access points, she examined the structure's optical properties, how light moved through the building, where reflective surfaces created opportunities for indirect observation, and how the building's materials might be exploited for unconventional engagement techniques. Her equipment for the Moscow operation represented the culmination of 4 years of technological development at the workshop. The optical systems appeared to be standard art authentication tools, magnifying glasses, color calibration devices, and photographic equipment that would attract no attention in her cover role. However, each piece incorporated metamaterial components that could be reconfigured into precision shooting aids within minutes. The insertion phase required Nika to establish herself as a legitimate art expert while conducting reconnaissance on Kozlov's security protocols. Her cover identity provided access to the building's interior spaces, but she remained under constant observation by security personnel who had been trained to identify intelligence operatives. During her first week in Moscow, Nika discovered that Kozlov's security measures included psychological warfare techniques designed to unnerve potential threats. The penthouse's interior featured artwork stolen from Jewish families during World War II, arranged in displays that celebrated their acquisition through violence. The message was clear. Kozlov considered himself untouchable and took pleasure in flaunting the suffering he had caused. More significantly, Nika realized that the oligarch's paranoia had created an exploitable weakness. His security protocols were so rigid that they followed predictable patterns. Every Tuesday at 3:47 p.m., Kozlov conducted a secure video conference with his weapons buyers from a specific room that overlooked Red Square. The timing never varied because the encrypted communications required satellite alignment that occurred at precise intervals. The challenge was that the conference room was positioned deep within the building, surrounded by reinforced walls and protected by multiple layers of security screening. Conventional wisdom suggested that engaging a target in such a location was impossible without access to heavy weapons that would cause massive collateral damage. Nika's solution drew upon principles she had developed during her junkyard training, adapted for the sophisticated urban environment of central Moscow. The building's architecture included decorative glass panels that had been installed during renovation work in the 1990s. These panels, designed purely for aesthetic purposes, created opportunities for optical manipulation that the security designers had never considered. Working during her authentication sessions, Nika secretly modified the positioning of several glass panels using tools disguised as art preservation equipment. The adjustments were microscopic, measured in degrees of arc that would be invisible to casual observation, but would create precise optical pathways through the building's interior structure. The engagement position was a hotel room 1,400 meters away that provided line of sight to the building's exterior glass panels. Nika's cover story justified her presence in the hotel as she was supposedly photographing architectural details for her authentication research. The room's windows faced the target building directly, but engaging through them would require shooting through multiple layers of glass while accounting for refraction effects that would defeat conventional optics. Her weapon system was concealed within photography equipment that appeared consistent with her cover identity. The rifle components were distributed among camera bodies, telephoto lenses, and tripod assemblies that could be rapidly configured into a precision shooting platform. The optical system incorporated the glass panels she had repositioned within the target building, creating a compound telescope effect that allowed her to see into the conference room despite the multiple obstacles. The shot itself required calculations that pushed beyond anything attempted in precision warfare history. The round would travel through Moscow's urban atmosphere, penetrate the hotel's window glass, cross 1,400 meters of open airspace, enter the target building through a specific decorative panel, then follow a precisely calculated trajectory through the building's interior spaces to reach the conference room. Environmental factors included not just wind and atmospheric pressure, but also the thermal effects of heated air rising from the city below, electromagnetic interference from Moscow's communication networks, and vibration patterns from subway trains running beneath both buildings. On Tuesday afternoon, Nika positioned herself at the hotel window with equipment that appeared to be documenting architectural features for academic research. Through her improvised optical system, she could see into Kozlov's conference room with clarity that exceeded what should have been physically possible. At exactly 3:47 p.m., Kozlov entered the room and positioned himself at his usual seat for the encrypted video conference. The targeting window would last no more than 90 seconds before he moved to a different location within the room that would block the optical pathway Nika had created. The mathematical complexity of the shot was staggering. The round needed to maintain sufficient velocity and accuracy after traveling through multiple glass barriers and following a trajectory path that included several directional changes caused by refraction effects. The margin for error was measured in millimeters across a distance that spanned nearly 2 kilometers of total travel path. Nika's finger touched the trigger with the same calm precision she had demonstrated years earlier when eliminating rats in the California junkyard. The principles were identical: understanding how light and projectiles move through space, then applying that knowledge with mathematical precision to achieve desired outcomes. The suppressed shot was inaudible even within the hotel room. Through her optical system, Nika watched as the round followed its predetermined path through Moscow's urban landscape, striking Kozlov with surgical precision while he sat in what he had believed was an impregnable fortress. The oligarch's death appeared to be caused by a heart attack. There was no visible wound, no indication of violence, and no evidence that anyone had penetrated his security perimeter. Russian investigators found no signs of assassination, classifying the death as natural causes despite the convenient timing. For intelligence agencies monitoring the situation, Kozlov's elimination represented proof that American capabilities had evolved beyond anything in their threat assessments. The idea that a target could be killed from nearly 2 kilometers away through multiple barriers without leaving forensic evidence challenged every assumption about precision warfare limitations. Nika exited Moscow using the same cover identity that had brought her into the country. Dr. Elena Vasquez completed her authentication work and departed Russia with documented proof of her legitimate academic activities. The Spanish art expert had never existed, and within weeks, all traces of her presence were eliminated from official records. The Moscow operation established Nika as something unprecedented in intelligence history, an asset whose capabilities were so advanced that enemy governments couldn't develop countermeasures against techniques they couldn't understand or duplicate. By her 23rd birthday, Nika Thompson had become a legend whispered about in intelligence circles, but officially non-existent. Her operations had eliminated 17 high-value targets across 4 continents, each death appearing natural or accidental to investigating authorities. The techniques she had pioneered in a California junkyard had evolved into capabilities that redefined the boundaries of precision warfare. The final mission would be different. Instead of eliminating a target, Nika was tasked with something far more complex, teaching her revolutionary methods to a new generation of operators while maintaining the absolute secrecy that protected both her identity and her techniques. The Pentagon had authorized creation of Project Mirrorglass, a training initiative designed to replicate Nika's capabilities within a small cadre of elite special operations personnel. The program would operate from a classified facility in Nevada where selected candidates would undergo instruction in optical physics, unconventional ballistics, and the psychological frameworks that enabled impossible shots. Selecting suitable candidates proved more challenging than developing the curriculum. Traditional military screening identified exceptional marksmen, but Nika's methods required cognitive flexibility that couldn't be measured through conventional testing. The candidates needed to abandon established doctrine and embrace approaches that violated everything they had learned about precision shooting. The final selection yielded 6 operators. Captain Jennifer Walsh, whose ballistics expertise had impressed Nika during her Fort Bragg training, Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, a Force Recons Marine with demonstrated ability to adapt unconventional techniques, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a Navy SEAL whose mathematical background enabled complex trajectory calculations, Sergeant Major David Anderson, an Army Ranger whose psychological profile suggested compatibility with high-stress precision work, Captain Lisa Chen, an Air Force Special Operations officer with experience in experimental weapons systems, and Major Robert Hayes, a Delta Force operator whose operational record included missions requiring extreme technical precision. The training program began with deconstructing everything the candidates understood about sniper doctrine. Nika's first lecture challenged assumptions that had formed the foundation of their previous training. Conventional sniping assumes optimal conditions, perfect equipment, clear sight lines, predictable environmental factors, she explained, standing before a blackboard covered with optical diagrams. Real-world operations rarely provide optimal conditions. Success requires working with imperfect materials to achieve perfect results. The initial exercises focused on optical physics rather than marksmanship. Candidates learned to identify different types of glass, understand refraction principles, and calculate how light behaved under various atmospheric conditions. The mathematical complexity exceeded what most military personnel encountered, requiring intensive study of concepts typically reserved for advanced physics courses. Captain Walsh struggled initially with abandoning her reliance on military-grade optics. Her background in conventional ballistics made it difficult to accept that improvised equipment could exceed the performance of precision-manufactured scopes. "This feels like deliberate sabotage," she confided to Torres after a particularly challenging session involving makeshift optical systems. "How can broken glass compete with equipment that costs more than my annual salary?" The breakthrough came during the 4th week when candidates began achieving accuracy improvements using Nika's glass-based systems. The optical principles she had discovered through desperation and experimentation proved to offer advantages that conventional equipment couldn't match. Different glass densities and curvatures created magnification and clarity effects that enhanced target identification under specific conditions. Sergeant Major Anderson adapted most quickly to the psychological requirements of Nika's methods. His combat experience had taught him to function under extreme stress, and he understood how the mental frameworks she described could improve performance rather than create additional burden. It's not about making shooting more complicated, he realized during a training exercise. It's about seeing opportunities that other people miss. The technical training evolved to include environmental exploitation, using architectural features, weather conditions, and terrain characteristics as components of the engagement system, rather than obstacles to overcome. Candidates learned to read light patterns that revealed structural information, identify acoustic signatures that indicated target movement, and calculate trajectory modifications that enabled shooting around corners. Major Hayes excelled at the tactical applications, demonstrating a natural ability to integrate Nika's techniques with special operations planning. His mission analysis incorporated optical considerations and environmental factors that conventional planners ignored, creating operational possibilities that existed nowhere in established doctrine. The final training exercise tested all elements of the program simultaneously. Candidates were required to eliminate multiple targets positioned throughout a mock urban environment using only materials they could scavenge from the training site. No conventional weapons or optics were provided. Success depended entirely on applying principles they had learned during 6 months of intensive instruction. Lieutenant Kim achieved the most impressive results, eliminating 5 targets from distances exceeding 800 meters using improvised equipment constructed from vehicle mirrors and salvaged metal brackets. Her mathematical precision combined with innovative thinking produced solutions that impressed even Nika. "She's developed techniques that I hadn't considered," Nika reported to Colonel Martinez during the program evaluation. "The student is advancing beyond the teacher." The graduation ceremony was conducted in absolute secrecy, with attendees limited to the candidates and 3 senior Pentagon officials whose names appeared on no public records. Each graduate received assignments to different special operations units, where they would serve as force multipliers, applying their unique capabilities to missions that conventional methods couldn't accomplish. More importantly, they carried with them authorization to identify and train additional candidates when operational requirements justified expanding the program. Project Mirror Glass would propagate through the special operations community like a classified infection, spreading capabilities that could reshape military doctrine without revealing their existence to potential adversaries. For Nika, the training program represented a transition from active operations to strategic influence. Her techniques would outlive her individual career, embedded within military organizations as classified advantages that enemy forces couldn't anticipate or counter. The personal cost of this transition became apparent during her final debriefing with Colonel Martinez. 7 years of deep cover operations had created psychological isolation that couldn't be easily reversed. The identity she had assumed for mission security had become more familiar than her original personality. "I sometimes forget which name I'm supposed to answer to," Nika admitted during the psychological evaluation. "The covers feel more real than the person who learned to shoot with broken glass." Dr. Warren recommended gradual reintegration rather than immediate retirement from active service. Nika's psychological profile suggested that complete disconnection from operational work could cause more trauma than continued limited involvement in strategic planning and program development. The solution was to be assigned to a permanent advisory role within the workshop, where she would continue developing revolutionary techniques while serving as a resource for operations requiring her unique capabilities. The position offered stability without the identity confusion created by constant cover changes. On her final day as an active field operator, Nika returned to the junkyard outside Bakersfield where her journey had begun. The trailer park had been demolished for redevelopment, but the automotive graveyard remained largely unchanged. Rusted vehicles still created metallic mountains, and broken glass still sparkled in the California sunlight. Standing among the debris that had been her salvation and training ground, Nika reflected on the transformation that had carried her from abandoned child to strategic weapon. The desperate survival tactics learned in this place had evolved into capabilities that protected national security interests across the globe. She selected a small fragment of mirror glass from the ground, a piece similar to those she had used for her first experiments with focused light. The fragment would serve as a reminder of origins that must remain classified forever. The drive away from Bakersfield marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The girl who had learned to shoot with broken glass was gone, replaced by something unprecedented in military history, a strategic asset whose techniques would influence precision warfare for generations to come. Behind her, the junkyard continued its patient decay, holding secrets that would never appear in any official record. The broken glass still caught sunlight and created focused beams that danced across the metallic landscape, waiting for someone with the vision to understand their potential. But that understanding now existed within classified programs that would ensure America's precision warfare capabilities remained unmatched by any adversary. The legacy of glass had become an invisible advantage in conflicts that the public would never know had been fought and won. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.